Hey, and I welcome you back to Wild Mythology with Bread and Salt. On this video, I'll be listing 30 female yokai from Japan. Japanese mythical creatures including the Rain Woman, the Spider Woman, and the Snow Woman. Now get ready, you better prepare yourself, because many of these women will suck your face off. Number 1. Futakuchi-onna. Futakuchi-onna is the two-mouthed woman, having one mouth located on her face and the other embedded underneath her hair in the back of her skull. The second mouth is a curse that requests large amounts of food from the woman it resides in. If the woman doesn't feed her second mouth, it will continuously scream and cause the woman extreme pain. During meals, the second mouth splits apart the woman's skull, forming lips, teeth, and a long tongue. It then controls the woman's hair, lifting food to its mouth, not allowing the woman to eat anything. Futakuchi-onna are said to form in numerous ways. In one legend, a woman starves her stepchild while keeping her actual child well fed. The dead stepchild then returns and enters into the evil stepmother, forming the second mouth. The most famous story involving this yokai is about a man who can only afford to feed himself. He then gets married to a woman who doesn't need to eat, only to soon discover that his stores of rice are running out fast. He later discovers that he has married a Futakuchi-onna, the two-mouthed woman. Number 2. Jorogumo. Jorogumo is the Spider Woman yokai who has the ability to transform between a beautiful woman and a half-spider, half-woman-like creature. Jorogumo can be found pretty much anywhere, but prefers abandoned homes, caves, and forests. They're very crafty and cold-hearted yokai with a love for handsome male prey. A Jorogumo's usual hunting method is to transform into a beautiful woman to entrance men looking for love. After they bring the man back into their domain, they web the man up and inject their venom into him over several days, slowly and painfully killing the man. Depending on how much space a Jorogumo has, hundreds of skeletons can decorate the Jorogumo's home. Number 3. Rokurokubi. Rokurokubi is a yokai that looks completely like a normal woman, except for the fact that her neck can grow to tremendous lengths. When the woman falls asleep, her neck grows and slithers around like a snake, completely independent from the sleeping woman who wakes up the next day without a clue to what her head and neck were doing. During the night, the head and neck will slither around the house licking oil lamps and sucking the blood of any sleeping human it finds. Rokurokubi are usually formed by a curse caused by an evil misdeed of one of the woman's family members. Number 4. Kuchisake-onna. Kuchisake-onna is the slit-mouthed yokai. Long ago, a beautiful woman cheated on her samurai husband. When he found out, he slit open the sides of her mouth, telling her that no one would ever call her beautiful again. Legends say that she now wanders the streets wearing a surgical mask and carrying a sharp pair of scissors. When she comes upon someone, she asks the individual if they find her beautiful. If they say no, she kills them. If they say yes, she takes off her mask, showing her slitted mouth, and asks again if they find her beautiful. If the individual says no, they get cut in half. If they say yes, she slits their mouth to match hers. The only way to avoid any of the outcomes is to either give her hard candy, which she absolutely adores, or to say that she looks normal when she asks her question. That will confuse her long enough for you to get away. But a piece of advice: never say nothing and run. She's faster than a race car. Number 5. Nure-onna. The Nure-onna are yokai with the body of a snake and the upper torso, head, and arms of a woman. They have forked tongues, slitted eyes, and long, smooth, wet black hair that helps them hide their eyes and scaly body. A Nure-onna will lurk in the water while only showing her human parts, waiting for men to notice her. Once a man gets close enough to get a closer look at her, the Nure-onna will wrap her tail around him and then proceed to suck out all of his blood. Sometimes they'll pretend to carry a child in a bundle and act distressed. When a man comes to help her, she'll ask him to hold the child. The man finds out soon that the fake baby gets heavier and heavier until he gets stuck under it and becomes dinner. Number 6. Yuki-onna. Yuki-onna are known as the Snow Women and are one of the most famous and most beautiful yokai from Japan. Yuki-onnas appear as extremely beautiful tall women with silky black hair and perfect pale skin. They usually wear a long white robe or sometimes completely nothing. It's said that when a woman dies in a snowstorm, that they become a Yuki-onna. Yuki-onna are famous for appearing in front of people who get stuck in snowstorms. They either help the people by leading them to shelter or attack them by freezing them solid or absorbing their heat with body contact. A famous legend tells of a Yuki-onna finding a young man and his uncle stuck in a snowstorm. She freezes the uncle but spares the boy because of how handsome he is. She warns him, though, to never tell anyone of her. Years later, the young man marries and has children with a beautiful woman named Yuki. He eventually tells Yuki about the mysterious Snow Woman, only for her to get angry and reveal that she was the Snow Woman all along. Yuki threatens him to look after their children and then disappears forever. Number 7. Harionago. Harionago are yokai with extremely long and unkempt black hair. At the end of every single strand of hair is a sharp barbed hook. They roam the streets during the night, searching for young single men. Once a Harionago finds a man, she'll mockingly laugh at him. If the man dares to laugh back, her hair will come alive and wrap around the man, with hooks sinking deep into his flesh. The Harionago will then rip the man into pieces and devour them. The only way to get away is to run as fast as possible and get inside behind a sturdy door. The Harionago will disappear in the coming morning, leaving behind hundreds of scratch marks on the door. Number 8. Ohaguro-Bettari. Ohaguro-Bettari are female yokai that wear a bridal kimono and have nothing but a gaping mouth with black teeth for a face. They're thought to be spirits of dead brides, since blackened teeth were a sign of a married woman back in the day. They appear at night around temples or in the homes of married men. They love playing tricks by attracting men to walk up to them from behind. The Ohaguro-Bettari then turns around, scaring the men with their grinning mouths. An amusing story tells of a man being called by his wife. He walks up to her from behind, and right when he is about to embrace her, she turns around, frightened to find an Ohaguro-Bettari instead of his wife. The female yokai gives him a wide grin and cackles as he runs in fear. Number 9. Aoandon. In Japan, a popular summer activity was the ghost story parties. A party where 100 ghost stories were told, with the least scariest told at the beginning and the scariest at the end. Before the first story was told, 100 blue paper lanterns were lit, and at the end of each story, a lantern would be blown out. According to legend, after the 100th lantern was blown out, a ghost formed from the emotions and fear of the group. Known as Aoandon, the ghost takes the appearance of a demonic woman with blue skin, horns, and a sinister grin. She would either slaughter the group or give them a final scare, then disappear. Either way, usually the partygoers would stop after the 99th story, too afraid to continue and chance the arrival of Aoandon. Number 10. Taka-onna. Taka-onna are women yokai who look like normal women but have the ability to grow several meters tall. They spend most of their time around red light districts near brothels. Stories tell of how they enjoy peeping through windows of brothels while people are having sex. Taka-onna are thought to be women who were too unattractive to marry, as well as those who were consumed and twisted by jealousy from not being able to find work in the red light district. Number 11. Teke Teke. Teke Teke is a vengeful spirit of a young woman who fell onto train tracks and was bisected by the train. Walking on her hands, she roams cities at night looking for her victims. Once she finds someone, she'll chase them down on her hands, dragging her upper torso with her backbone making a scratching teke teke-like sound on the ground. She's extremely fast, and once she catches her victim, she'll take a scythe that is tied to her back and cut her prey into two. Number 12. Ame-onna. Ame-onna are the rain woman yokai. Wherever they walk, rain usually follows. There have been many eyewitness accounts of an Ame-onna standing in the rain while licking the water on her hand. While farmers in villages pained with droughts welcome the rain woman, fresh new mothers fear the female yokai. On rainy nights, Ame-onna wanders villages searching for babies. If they find one, they carry it off so they can turn it into a new rain woman. Sometimes mothers who have had their children stolen are so stricken with grief that they themselves turn into Ame-onnas. That could be the reason why the rain women are looking to steal babies. Number 13. Dodomeki. Dodomeki were once female pickpocketers who stole one too many times and were cursed. The curse made their arms grow in length, and every time they stole something, a bird eye would then appear on one of their arms. The more accomplished they were, the more eyes they gained. The more eyes they gained, the better their thieving skills grew. More eyes meant they could see new and creative ways to steal. Number 14. Hone-onna. The Hone-onna is a yokai known as the Bone Woman. They appear as beautiful women to young men and use that beauty to lure these men into bed. After weeks of coupling, the men get weaker and weaker, not realizing that they're actually sleeping with a living skeleton that's sucking out their life force. Hone-onna are formed when a dying woman has a great love for a living man. The woman will die, and then after her flesh is gone, come back reanimated as a skeleton to rejoin her lover at night. This will continue to happen until her lover turns to dust from having his life force stolen, or until the lover in question figures out the truth, in which case he will then ward his home, the Hone-onna, causing her to go out into the world to find a new lover. Number 15. Tsurara-onna. Tsurara-onna are icicles that have transformed into beautiful young women. While similar to the Yuki-onna, the Tsurara-onna is slightly different. Most stories involving the yokai have her either appear at the door of an old couple or the door of a young man who wished for a wife as beautiful as an icicle hit by the sunlight. In both versions, the Tsurara-onna is reluctant to take a bath, but is eventually forced to. When the old couple or man goes to check on her, they find that she has disappeared and that some pieces of ice are slowly melting away in the bath. Number 16. Hanako. Hanako is a modern yokai said to take the form of a young girl with a bobbed haircut and a red dress. She's a spirit that haunts the girls' bathroom of schools. Legend has it that if you go to the toilets on the 3rd floor of a school, knock 3 times on the door of the 3rd stall, and ask if Hanako wants to play, she will appear before you and say yes. Then she will either scream bloody murder or drag you into the toilet of the 3rd stall. Number 17. Hikeshi Baba. Hikeshi Baba is a lamp-blowing yokai that resembles an ugly old hag. While not very dangerous, Hikeshi Baba hates light and happy emotions. She enjoys blowing out any candle or lantern she finds, as well as making places and people feel down and dark. She usually teams up with other yokai, blowing out flames to make the surroundings more favorable for the other yokai. Number 18. Kage-onna. Kage-onna is the living shadow of a woman. They're easier to see on windows and sliding doors, and are especially easy to find on nights of the full moon. Having a Kage-onna stick around a house usually means that it's haunted or about to be the home of many other yokai. They're able to move through any substance and are completely silent when they want to be. Number 19. Karasu-Tsuma. Karasu-Tsuma is known as the Frog Wife and is involved in an interesting story. There was once a man who loved working on his farm. In fact, he worked so much and so hard that he didn't have time to find a wife. Luckily, a young woman who didn't mind hard work fell in love with him. After 13 years of marriage, the young woman told her husband that she was going to her father's funeral, and he was not to follow her. Curious about why he wouldn't be allowed to attend, the husband followed his wife to a rice field. Then she disappeared while a small splash came from the water. After a while of waiting, the man threw a rock into the water and made his way back home. That night, his wife returned apologizing for being out so late. She told her husband that the funeral was postponed because the priest was hit in the head by a rock that fell out of the sky. Realizing that he threw the stone, he told his wife that he followed her. Shaking her head in disappointment, the wife transformed into a frog and disappeared forever. Number 20. Katawaguruma. Katawaguruma is a naked woman that is connected to and rides a giant flaming wheel. She goes from town to town along the road looking for sinful souls. Unfortunately, she carries a curse around with her. Anyone who looks at her will be cursed, a curse that can be passed on by gossiping about seeing the Katawaguruma. While it's not known what exactly the curse does, it's recorded that if the gossiping grows too much in a town, then that town will be entirely destroyed. Number 21. Honengame. Honengame are turtle woman yokai. They have the body of a big turtle, a seaweed-like tail, and a woman's head with horns sticking out. They're very shy yokai and only appear in front of humans to give them prophecies, usually dealing with droughts, pandemics, and other natural disasters. Number 22. Kosodate. Kosodate are the ghosts of women who died while they were pregnant. They deliver their child in their graves and then do everything in their power to make sure the child survives. They often try to buy candies and sweets from vendors to bring back to their child. They will also attempt to lead living people to the spot where they were buried so that the child can be found and offered a new home. Once the Kosodate's child is found and cared for, the Kosodate will find peace and move on to the afterlife. Number 23. Kuren-Tsuma. An old story tells of a man named Sachi one day saving a crane from a trap. He then nursed the bird back to health and released it back into the wild. A year later, during a huge blizzard, a young woman named Tsuma knocked at his door, asking for shelter. Sachi let Tsuma in, and during the 3-day blizzard, the two fell deeply in love. After years of marriage, Tsuma asked Sachi to get her materials for weaving cloth. And although Sachi was very poor, he loved his wife and got her the materials. Tsuma then told him that she was going to weave cloth so beautiful that he wouldn't believe his eyes. But she warned him not to come into the other room while she was working. After 3 days and 3 nights, Tsuma came out of the room with a roll of cloth that was finer than silk. Sachi took the cloth to the market and sold it for a lot of money, which he used to buy goods and more materials. When he returned home, Tsuma was happy that Sachi was so overjoyed with their new wealth, but she told him that she hoped the money wouldn't change him. Tsuma made more cloth over the next year, letting Sachi get more and more money. Eventually though, Sachi locked Tsuma in the room, forcing her to make more cloth. Curious to see if she was disobeying him, Sachi peeked into the room only to be shocked. He found Tsuma transformed into a half-bald crane, combining her own feathers into the cloth to make it better than silk. Staring back at him with tears in her eyes, Tsuma told him that he had broken his promise to never look inside the room and that greed had changed him. She then flew out the window, never to be seen again. Number 24. Nikusui. Nikusui are the vampire yokai that take the form of beautiful women. They usually attack men who are traveling with a lantern at night. They appear out of darkness and flirt with the man as they get closer and closer. Once they get close enough, they'll blow out the lantern and bite into the man's neck, sucking out all his insides until there is nothing left but skin and bones. Number 25. Oiwa. Once there was a ronin named Lemon and his wife Oiwa, who was weak from recently giving birth. Lemon resented Oiwa because they were poor and he thought it was her fault. Next door lived a rich doctor who had a beautiful granddaughter. Lemon was infatuated with the granddaughter, and the doctor liked Lemon, so the two decided to kill Oiwa. The doctor gave Lemon poison to feed Oiwa. Telling Oiwa that the poison was medicine, Oiwa drank it. But instead of killing her, the poison distorted her face, causing her to lose her hair and her eyes to droop. Seeing her reflection, Oiwa stabbed herself and died while cursing Lemon's name. On his wedding day with the granddaughter, Lemon went to remove the young woman's veil, only to discover Oiwa's drooping face. Frightened, Lemon took his sword and hacked the spirit's head off, only to discover that he had been tricked and that he had just killed his freshly new wife. Over time, Oewa did this over and over again, resulting in the death of the doctor and many others. She would come out from the inside of a paper lantern and haunt Lemon for months. Eventually, Lemon was killed by the doctor's grandson for killing his sister and grandfather. But to this very day, Oewa has not been given peace and still roams the land, appearing out of lanterns. Number 26, Okiku. Okiku was a beautiful servant girl working for a famous samurai. Every day, the samurai would ask Okiku to be his, but she always refused. One day, the samurai hid one of his family's special 10 plates and accused Okiku of losing it, a crime that was punishable with death. Worried, Okiku counted the plates from 1 to 9 over and over again, hoping that there was some mistake. The samurai then told Okiku that he would forgive her if she became his, but once again Okiku refused. Angry that his plan didn't work, he threw Okiku into a well, killing her. The night after, Okiku returned as a spirit. She would appear in the samurai's home and count the plates from 1 to 9. Once she reached 9, she would let out a screeching scream that terrified the inhabitants of the house. Anyone unlucky enough to hear her counting all the numbers died instantly. Eventually, the exhausted samurai hired a priest who shouted out the number 10 before Okiku could scream after her counting. This caused Okiku to be at peace that the 10th plate was found, allowing her to finally rest. Number 27, Aoni. Aoni is a hag yokai with long black hair that lives deep in the mountains. She rarely comes down from the mountains, but when she does, she knocks on doors of family homes, asking for shelter and food for a night. If they agree, Aoni will stay up all night producing high-quality yarn from her mouth for the family. When the family wakes up, they discover that Aoni has disappeared while the bundle of yarn sits beside the door. Number 28, Jikatsu Baba. Jikatsu Baba is a mountain hag that holds a deep hatred for humanity. She carries 2 snakes, one blue and one red. The blue snake breathes ice that freezes anything and everything it touches, while the red snake breathes out fire and turns everything into ash. Number 29, Ubagabi. Ubagabis are floating heads of old women on fire with the ability to travel 4 kilometers instantly, as well as breathe fire. These yokai are formed when an old woman gets caught stealing oil and then dies from shame. Legend says that if these yokai bump into you, then you will mysteriously die within the next 3 years. The only way to stop this yokai before it hits you is to shout out "oil robber," which will cause it to disappear. And finally, number 30, Yama-uba. Yama-uba are the old crone-looking witches that inhabit the Japanese mountains. They love the taste of children, but hate eating the elderly. They often use their powerful magic to disguise themselves into beautiful women and make powerful magical items. One story tells of a young girl getting lost in the mountains. She happens upon a witch's home who luckily comes to care for the girl. The witch gives the girl a magical cloak that will disguise her as an old woman. The witch then tells the girl the way back home, but warns her to keep the cloak on so that the other Yama-uba will ignore her. Luckily for the young girl, the cloak works and she finds her way home. And there you have it. I give you 30 women yokai from Japanese mythology here on Wild Mythology.